United Plans.
Just me. I love when you guys pop me on first. It's always fun. Rob, no, don't do that. I have a good idea for a new show. I was going to ask my daughter if she wants to do a show with me. And I was going to just do a show with me and my daughter. And I figured we would just like trash other shows. Like it's such a market out there for that. Like nobody else is doing that. So I'm like, my daughter could do like the tech angle for me. She could pop comments up and I'll just like find shows.
You just cannot help yourself, can you?
What do you mean?
I don't know. Nothing.
I thought that's a good idea for. All right, never mind. All right, so I'm pretty excited tonight. We finally got an Australian listener on with us. So Carl follows me on Twitter for a long time. This is his first time popping in. Welcome, Carl.
Yes, I've known Carl for many years. We met from Patrick Coffin's podcast, and then we made friends for the past like 5 years or something. So it's good to see him in the chat.
Yeah, Carl and I have had conversations because we were both taking the same medication a few years back. So we've actually had some conversations. Let's see. Terry's in. All right. So tonight we have a little bit of a special show. We were planning on having Margot on to discuss chastity because Margot wanted to come on the night that we had Tim Gordon on, and we had been waiting a long time to get Tim Gordon on. So I thought that really, I wanted to make sure that Rob and I had a chance to talk to Tim. So we told her that we would do a second show on chat because there was a bunch of things lacking in the Matt Walsh conversation that Margot thought really needed to be addressed. So we initially planned on discussing that. And then this New York Times article dropped. And that is a very pretty name, Margot.
Thank you.
Then this New York Times article dropped. So I scrambled this afternoon and I said, Rob, why don't we contact Margot and let's see if she's willing. Really, it's the perfect conversation to have with you because you work for Mass of the Ages, right?
Yes, I work for Mass of the Ages, and I can go back and forth. I can do chastity or Latin Mass. Those are my two biggest passions. So either topic, I can just do it anytime.
Well, the good thing about our show is it never stays on the track.
Yeah,
so I'm sure
true.
We'll begin speaking about this New York Times article, and then I'm sure we'll devolve into wherever it goes. Rob, do you have the article? Because I did not get it yet. And
yeah, I do. You want me to put it up on screen right now?
Yeah, maybe, because it might be easier for me to just read it right off screen.
Okay, let me do that here.
Let's see. Yeah, Maddie is the star.
I want orange bond.
Oh boy, my eyes. This is gonna be fun.
I
can do it. I got it. I'm good.
You can get your glasses. It's okay. We'll wait for you.
I actually have 20/20 vision. So this is an article written by Ruth Graham. An ancient form of Catholic worship is drawing in young traditionalists and conservatives, but it signals a divide within the church. So everybody knows all the drama going on in the church. So let's see what she has to say. I haven't actually read this whole article yet. Eric Augustine's 8 children. Margot says, "What? You didn't do any prep?" No, I didn't do any prep. That's not how we roll over here. So Eric Augustine's 8 children used to call the first day of the week Party Sunday. The family would wake up, attend a short morning mass at a Catholic parish near their house, then head home for lunch and an afternoon of relaxing and watching football. But this summer, the family made a big switch. One of his teenage sons said on a recent Sunday Afternoon outside St. Joseph's Shrine, the family's new parish. At St. Joseph, the liturgy is ornate, precisely choreographed and conducted entirely in Latin. The family drives an hour round trip to attend the service that starts at 11 a.m. and can last almost 2 hours. So real quick, let's see. The family drives an hour round trip. That is short, I would say, right?
Yeah.
Rob, how far do you drive when you go to Mass? 4 hours round trip. Margot, how about you?
It depends. I have one that's near me on Sundays that's like 10 minutes away, and then but the actual FSSP parish is about 45 minutes away from me. So it depends on where I want to go.
Yeah, so my scenario is I have there's a diocesan mass every Sunday, but that's about 45 to 50 minutes away. There's also one in Manhattan, which is about an hour away. And then the first and third Sunday of the month, there's one about 15 to 20 minutes away. So I usually go first and third Sunday to the ones about 20 minutes away. So it's about 40 minutes round trip, but more regularly, because sometimes it's 5 Sundays in the month. So more regularly, I'm driving about an hour each way. So it's 2 hours round trip. So let's see. Starts at 11, can last almost 2 hours. The traditional Latin Mass, an ancient form of Catholic worship that Pope Francis has tried to discourage, is instead experiencing a revival in the United States. It appeals to an overlapping mix of aesthetic traditionalists, young families, new converts, and critics of Francis. And its resurgence, boosted by the pandemic years, is part of a rising right-wing strain within American Christianity as a whole. Now, I don't like that they're dividing this as a right-wing thing. I hate...
It's the New York Times, so it's going to be expected that they're going to make it political.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous that they're doing that, because
I would say conservative Novus Ordo Catholicism is far more right-wing than traditional Catholicism.
Yeah, I would say most people that go to the traditional Mass have been blackpilled on politics, I think, right? Like, they don't really care about politics at this point. It's like, let's see, wait. So, and even the whole idea, like, I did not start going to the traditional Mass as resistance to Francis. I did it because the Novus Ordo in my local Novus Ordo was such a hard Mass to sit through. I did not have a unicorn Novus Ordo. It's probably some of the worst liturgy in the country, I would imagine. It's so bad. And it's very difficult to get through. So whenever the conversation between the two forms comes up, it's like, the only parish that does a Reverend Novus Ordo is the same one that does the Latin Mass every week. So why would I drive that hour to go to a Reverend Novus Ordo if I could just go to the Latin Mass at that point? Rob, go back down. I think did I miss anything there?
No, that's where you left off right before this.
No, did I say all that? The church not just... No, yeah, I finished right there. Now scroll up. You're killing me here. The Mass has sparked a sprawling proxy battle in the American church over not just songs and prayers, but also the future of Catholicism and its role in culture and politics. I also want to point out how awesome it is that the New York Times is picking up on, like, so I don't look at it as so much a countercultural movement in the church as a countercultural movement in general. Right? It's like we are like the Latin Mass is like punk rock for a lot of us. It's like they're all young people. They don't want to go along with the culture, and they're forming around this ancient liturgy that has these really like a strongly ascetic way of living and stuff. Margot, how old are you?
I am 31.
31. When did you first attend the traditional Mass?
So for me, I think I started going on 2016 or 2017. It was a gradual thing. We had a Reverend Novus Ordo at my parish. Then the pastor got reassigned, and we got a different pastor who was a lot more modernist. So that was one of the things. And then I had just been seeing, like, I'd been slowly red pilling on Pope Francis. here and there, but little things like 2015 was the most Letizia, and then the big bombshell with Vigano. Somehow I discovered this small YouTube channel called Taylor Marshall. It's very small, not well known at all. And so just from getting his commentary on things, and he started talking about Latin Mass, so I slowly started learning about the Latin Mass, and I discovered there is a Latin Mass at my parish. So I slowly started going. It was hard because I grew up in Nova Ordo. That's all I knew. So I fought it for a while, and I tried to go back and forth between the two forms. But then I discovered Dr. Peter Kozneski's books. I started reading those. And once I started learning all about the Latin Mass, and I was learning about all the prayers that were removed, I was learning about how the liturgical calendars are pretty different. And I was just like, I was trying to go back and forth, like do Novus Ordo during the week and Latin Mass on Sundays. But then I was like trying to keep up with the two different liturgical calendars, because I am obsessed with liturgy, and I'm obsessed with following the liturgical calendar daily, not just on Sundays, but every day. And so it's getting to be too much. So I think around 2017 or 2018, I made the decision to be Latin Mass only, and just to stick with Latin Mass and just stick with. I'm going to annoy some people. I'm just going to say I follow the 1962 calendar. I'm not one of those pre-55 people yet, because that's what my FSSP pastor does, is the 62 calendar. So not completely, I guess I'm not completely trad in that sense, but yeah, so I just discovered it. And for me, the Latin Mass it was never so much of a preference. It was more just like, I want everything. I want like all the different prayers that were removed. I want the whole liturgical calendar, everything. And then I started realizing it's a whole lifestyle. Like traditionalism is not just Mass on Sundays. It's a whole lifestyle, really, of how you look at Catholicism in the world and how you conduct yourself. And I just started, just gradually, God let me more and more into it.
Yeah, so going to the traditional Mass is one thing, but living a traditional Catholic life is something a little different. It's like you really have to embrace a fast feast mentality.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
even like the fasting is not like emphasized in the Novus Ordo that much at all. Even like what they've done. Also whole thing, like I was realizing like how little fasting there was, and how much, like not how much more fasting there is in the traditional form, no, in the traditional calendar, but just like how much has been taken away, like the Ember days. Like no one like that. I never knew what Ember days were. I never knew about all these different fasting periods or anything. And even like Lent was just like, you just fast on Ash Wednesday, Good Friday, that's it. But wait, what happened to Rob?
He's doing something with his kid. Don't worry, but he disappears from time to time. Hope might have a headache or something like that. Yeah, so I never even heard of an Ember Day before I started attending the traditional liturgy either. Yep. It's not like it's even the fasting on or abstinence on Fridays. These are things that I never knew Advent was a time of penance.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Like, because Advent was just like, it was just the Christmas season extended, basically. Like, you start listening to Christmas music, right after Thanksgiving or whatever. And that's one of the things I slowly decided to stop doing. And I try to really embrace a more rigorous Advent, though I'm not perfect at it yet, because I really like fasting is one of the things I'm terrible at, but I'm still trying to slowly go into it more and more. But I just try to really try to not celebrate Christmas until December 25th, which is typical in our culture, because our culture just pushes Christmas on you. Like November 1st already, like everyone's in the Christmas spirit already. It's not even Thanksgiving yet, and everyone's already like listening to Christmas music and having the Christmas drinks at Starbucks and all this. My
kid tried putting on Home Alone the other day. I was like, absolutely not yet. I am waiting on this movie. There's no way.
And then I saw a comment in there from Kano. I want to respond. Yes, Kano. Father Melotto was a big influence on me, and it was very difficult when he left. I can't remember when it was that he was reassigned. I think it was like around 15 or 16 that Father Melotto was reassigned from Pino and Paul. But yeah, because he was very reverent, and he did a lot for transforming my parish and making it more traditional. Even though he's Novus Ordo, he still did a lot to try to make it more reverent. And then he was reassigned, and we got a not so good pastor.
So wait, now you're telling me that the Latin Mass you had gone, they were already celebrating it at your parish, and you had never gone?
What happens is the parish is closest to me, that's 10 minutes from me, is St. Pino and Paul, and it's a Novus Ordo parish, but there's an FSSP priest who comes and says Latin Mass on Sunday afternoons at 4:30 p.m. His parish, St. Joseph's, is in Joliet, which is about 50 minutes from me. So yeah, I mean, though I always knew that there was this like 4:30 Latin Mass at my parish, but like I never bothered to go. So I mean, I always just thought Latin Mass was old fashioned and just kind of boring, and I only knew the Novus Ordo like until like Taylor Marshall and Dr. Peter Kuznowski and others slowly like started introducing me to it, and I slowly started learning about it. But and there was just other different things. Like I started getting more and more uncomfortable with the like seeing females distribute the Eucharist. Like even at my Reverend Novus Ordo parish, there was like, the old boomer, 60-year-old lady grandmothers who were like distributing the Eucharist, and I'm just like, this is not okay. Like I don't want to be seeing like Jesus from the priest. Like I don't want to be like having some old lady giving me the Blessed Sacrament.
My kids every once in a while will have my wife will take the kids to a regular Novus Ordo, and whenever the kids come home, they go, "Dad, you see the old lady up on the altar just going like this with the hand sanitizer? You see her just going like this thing.
It's horrible.
It's a liturgical act for them." All right, let's continue on with the article. Latin Mass adherents tend to be socially conservative and tradition-minded. Some, like the Augustine family, are attracted to the Mass's beauty, symbolism, and what they describe as a more reverent form of worship. Others have also been drawn to the old form through a brand of new hard right rhetoric and community they have found in some Catholic communities online. Bunch of freaking right wingers online, boy. They see the Pope's attempt to curb the old Latin Mass as an example of the perils of a world becoming unmoored from Western religious values. So
the thing is that last sentence is has nothing to do with the first sentence there.
Well,
so the first sentence all right, go ahead, break that down, Rob.
Well, I'm just saying they
So they see the Pope's attempt to curb the old Latin Mass as an example of the perils of a world becoming unmoored from the West. Yeah, it doesn't at all go.
Yeah, like it just jumps. But again, I don't expect much from the New York Times at all. So I mean, I just read it.
No, but this is a fair article. Like this isn't.
Yeah.
They're not making it out like they're crazy or anything. So let's see. The traditional Latin Mass, also referred to as the extraordinary form, was celebrated for centuries. I mean, this person knows their stuff, right? Yeah. This person isn't just whipping it together without any info. So the traditional Latin Mass, also referred to as the extraordinary form, was celebrated for centuries until the transformations of the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s, which were intended in part. Mute your mic. That child is loud. Traditional Latin Mass, also referred to as the extraordinary form, celebrated for centuries until the transformations of the Second Vatican Council in the 60s, which were intended in part to make the rite more accessible. After the council, Mass could be celebrated in any language. Contemporary music entered many parishes, and priests turned to face the people in the pews. Oof! All right, that's a lot to digest right there. So, making the rite more accessible, like,
well, because what they probably mean, of course, is that putting it in the vernacular, putting it in English, and making it easier, the whole easier to understand canard, because no one understands Latin, blah blah blah. Even though we have like Latin English translation missiles, so you can follow along, but it's always like, oh, I don't understand Latin, and the priest is not facing me, and now the priest is facing me, so I can see him and stuff, and they don't understand the deeper meanings of things. They don't understand the deeper meaning that the priest is supposed to be facing east, not just facing the tabernacle, but facing towards east, facing towards Jerusalem. They don't understand that Mass is not necessarily, it doesn't have to be understood. It's such a deep mystery. We don't need to fully understand it. And the priest is not talking to us. He's talking to Jesus. So it is right and just that the priest would be facing Jesus in the tabernacle or not.
I do want to talk and just say something just to Phil's comment. So, Phil, there was probably a time where I would have thought nothing. I mean, I will be honest, even before I'd ever heard of the traditional Mass, I was never crazy about extraordinary ministers. I just wasn't. I always felt like there was something lacking. Like, I've always been a communion on the tongue guy, even before the traditional mass. I never was okay with communion in the hand. I just wasn't. And the whole idea of communion on the tongue from a lay minister always seemed kind of absurd to me. Like, even before I knew the catechesis behind it. And then when I heard Bishop Schneider try to, like, kind of explain it, where when we receive, we're acting like an infant being fed the heavenly food. You're going on your knees. You don't get fed in your hand and eat it like a cracker. You're being fed this food where you open your mouth like a little child and you put your tongue out
and you receive it from your father. Like, you're receiving it from your father, who is the priest, and also to the we're not, the lady's not supposed to touch the Blessed Sacrament. That is reserved
or even the
priest.
sacred vessels.
Yeah, or even the sacred vessels as a whole. Yeah, that's reserved for the priest. Like, only his hands are consecrated. Our hands are not consecrated. And going further, like, usually back when we had the traditional form of baptism, our tongues would be consecrated at baptism. So then, like, that's why the host can touch the tongue, is because it would traditionally have been consecrated. Now, of course, it was lost in the Novus Ordo baptism, but back in the day, that's
all right. So I don't want to make this about
communion.
No, but not even that. I don't want to make it about all the things the Novus Ordo are lacking. So, but also, so Phil says so others don't care about reverence. So when I try to discuss these things, I never want to knock, especially extraordinary ministers. These are not people who are intentionally going in to be irreverent toward the Eucharist. These are, I've known, my mother was an extraordinary minister for many years. So
also, I want to say too that I used to be an altar server, so I want to just have that full admission. I was an altar
You were an altar boy?
Yes, in college, actually, from 2009 to about 2012, I was a female altar server.
Okay, so now when I ask you,
I was an extraordinary minister for a little while.
Okay, so now here's what I'll ask both of you. When you did that out of what intention? Was it the intention to, I want to serve the church and I want to help in any way I can?
It was twofold for me. It started off with me wanting to serve, wanting to help out, wanting to be included in the mass, wanting to help out. I did notice spiritual pride welling up in me after I did it for a while, because I started like just in my head having these thoughts of like, oh, look at me, like I'm so much better, like, you know, I'm not just sitting in the pews, like I'm actually helping at mass and stuff. And so like there was some pride that did well up in me, to be honest. But at the same time, like there was some good-heartedness where I did want to serve, and I think it was God planting the seeds in me to my love of liturgy, because it did help me to learn the liturgy, even though it was Novus Ordo, not Latin Mass. It still helped me to have that, to develop that love for the liturgy that I still have.
Right. So my point is, when anybody's criticizing the extraordinary ministers, you have to understand these are people who I know a lot of people who have done it, who did it. These are people who, from the bottom of their heart, want to serve the church. So it's not like I'm not crazy about when I hear people going and bashing the extraordinary ministers. These are not people who are trying to be irreverent. These are not people who are trying to do something wrong. They're not trying to subvert the church. These are usually people, and they tend to be women, who want to help. Right? So they just are poorly catechized. It's more just a matter of that. So this is a lack of catechesis issue. So I don't.
The parish I was at when I got involved with that, as we joined the parish, right? You know, signed in the registration form, and you know, it was your typical super over the top, welcoming, liberalish parish, right? But it was more or less impressed on us that they had this 2-page, and I'm not even joking, 2-page list of ministries that you could join, and by could join they mean that they were going to push you to join one, because if you didn't, you weren't really participating in the church or the liturgy.
Yeah. So, it's this weird conception of participation that happened at the council and after the council, that everybody felt like they
active participation thing.
Unless you're up on the altar, you're not actually participating for some reason,
right?
You know, or holding hands and saying the Our Father out loud. And I gotta be honest, even I'm not trying to bash the Novus Ordo. It's just, before I had ever attended a traditional mass, it always felt kind of weird and culty when like the laity would respond in unison to certain things the way they did, like
especially when it's all flat monotone and half the people are looking other places. It's not.
Lord, hear our prayer. It was always just a little strange to me.
I always felt like I had to be like in sync with everyone else and like have like the right rhythm and stuff. It was just always kind of distracting to.
Yeah, it's always a little corny. All right, so Rob, let's bring up that article. Let's finish this article out. Let's see how this is.
It's gonna be another few.
For the record, we're like a tenth of the way through it.
Yeah, this is really long. Huh? It's really long, Anthony.
It's not right,
well, then we
terrible, but
we gotta move through this, and I'm pretty talkative, so we gotta be careful here.
If you want me to read it, I can go.
I'll kind of pick out. I'll pick out good spots.
Okay.
No, let's read the whole thing. Where are we going? Come on, stop. All right, it's really that long, though.
Yes.
All right, let's go. Let's see. All right, the growth. I mean,
it's not super long, but
there's a lot of pictures. Go back up. These people got nothing better to do than hang out with us. Let's see. Others have also been drawn to the. Where are we at? Okay. Yeah, we already. All right, we read that. All right, so the traditional Latin Mass also. No, I read that already. But the traditional Latin Mass, with all its formality and mystery, never fully disappeared, though it represents a fraction of masses performed in the 17,000 Catholic parishes in the United States. It's thriving. The United States now appears to have at least 600 venues offering a traditional Mass, the most by far of any country. This growth is happening as Pope Francis has cracked down, issuing strict new limits on the last. I skipped that. Don't worry, it wasn't important.
Well, right? I just want to. When I was reading this earlier today, something kind of hit me here. Like 17,000 Catholic parishes, right? 400 offering the traditional Latin Mass every Sunday. Mm-hmm. One thing we hear all the time from those really attached to the Novus Ordo is when we bring up things like clown masses, bubble masses, Saint Sabina or whatever in Chicago, we always hear, "Oh, that's so rare. It's hardly any of them." With 17,000 Catholic parishes, I guarantee there's more than 400 masses like that every Sunday. So don't tell me it's all that rare. Don't tell me it never happens. I guarantee it happens more often.
Maybe not the clown. Maybe not the clown.
Not the clown mass, but I'm talking serious liturgical abuse.
Serious liturgical abuse.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have to say is happening in the majority.
And another thing, like, there should not be that spectrum of masses. Like, that's one of the whole points of the Latin Mass is that it can't be altered. It can't be like, oh, you go to this parish and it's, a guitar mass. You go to that parish and it's a reverent parish. Like, there's none of that in the Latin Mass. It's just whatever it is. It's either high mass or low mass. So I mean, yes, like, and then yes, there can be some variances. Like maybe some priests are better at Gregorian chant than other priests, possibly, but. Besides that, you're not going to like go there. Like, you know what to expect when you go to a Latin Mass. Whereas when you walk into just any Novus Ordo parish, you don't necessarily know what you're going to get. You don't know if it's going to be rough, and you don't know if it's going to have liturgical abuses necessarily.
Yeah, this is. I still think that when I see people say that like I got a message the other day because Joe Boca said on Twitter, go to Mass unless you're to Novus Ordo, then don't go. Like, that to me is such a preposterous statement.
I'll never support that. I mean, that's why I go to the Novus Ordo 80 to 90% of the time.
Right, and I don't follow people who don't have access to the Latin Mass, like say Rob and Hope. I do not expect Rob and Hope to be driving like 4 hours round trip every weekend to get to the Latin Mass. I mean, that would be quite a commitment if they were able to do such a thing. But I mean, like, that's ridiculous at a certain point. It shouldn't be that way. But so I don't fault them. What I do is, like, if you do have access to a Latin Mass, you should go. You should check it out. But if there's not one, like I know my friend Terry, she's not able to get to one. She was saying how like the closest one is like 4 hours away from her, so it'd be an 8-hour round trip for her to get to a Latin Mass. I don't fault her for that. What I do is, if you do have a local Latin Mass, you go check it out, see what it's like. Don't just necessarily just stick with the Novus Ordo. Just be open to the Latin Mass.
Okay, so now I do want to address Phil's comment here. So, Phil, here's what I would say: the fact that the Latin Mass is offered so rare, like so sporadically. What's happening is, and even if it wasn't offered at all, even when you have the Novus Ordo allows for so much adaptation that
over a million different potential combinations of options.
So here's
a million different masses.
So here's what I would say. What happens is, because there's so many options, what you have is liberal Novus Ordo. So now let's say every parish is Latin Mass. What would happen is, more likely you'd have people going to their local Mass, right? You would just go to your local parish, and you would stop having this segregation happening where, even before I knew there was a Latin Mass, I still church hopped until I found a conservative Novus Ordo parish, right? Like, my parish, if I actually went to the parish that I'm supposed to go to, when I tell you, it is probably one of the most horrific parishes you've ever seen in your life. Like, I've had the priest stand up, change the words of the creed to, instead of saying "for us men in our salvation," "us men and us women in our salvation," like changing the
serious
words.
liturgical abuse.
Serious liturgical abuse, right? Because that is allowed in the play of the Novus Ordo. So I'm not even saying. So, like, somebody had said the other day, like, if you were Pope, what would you do? Would you ban the Novus Ordo? I think what I would say the compromise should be is the 62 missal allowed in the vernacular, but you still follow the red and the black the way it's supposed to be done, right? What does it say? The red and do the black, or maybe I have that backwards.
Yeah.
Do the red and say the black.
Yeah.
See, I think this sort of solution is probably more likely, or not likely. I think it's a better solution, because
Francis feels that way.
Make it a separate right, because people also come to me and be like, "Oh, well, like, what do you think about, like, Byzantine?" Or this? I'm like, Byzantine, all about, Chaldean, like, those are different rites of the church. I have no problem with them. My problem is that in the Latin rite, there are two forms of masses right now, and people have been acting for a long time that they can just coexist, they enrich the other, but I'm just like, no, they can't. Like, there are things that you really get into studying them. You see that the Confitio prayer was rewritten. The prayer, we say, "I confess to Almighty God." My brothers and sisters, like, it used to be, "I confess, to Saint Michael the Archangel, to the Blessed Mary, to Saint John the Baptist." Those things were removed from the Confitio in the Novus Ordo. Why was that? They removed the Judica Psalm. So it's not just a matter of, like, these two forms are the same. They're not the same. They're both very different, and so they should be given their own rights.
Not even that. Well, that as well, but even more than that, I mean, is there's two different cultures now in the Latin rite, two entirely separate cultures. It's not just separate liturgies anymore. You go to certain Novus Ordos, and I don't feel. I know I'm going to get so much pushback for saying it, but it doesn't feel Catholic. Like, when I came back to the church after 10 years away, and I went to the local Novus Ordo parish there, because that's what you're supposed to do as a Catholic, right? And we're sitting there, and my wife is coming into the church, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, this isn't the same religion I left 10 years ago. It's
so
not the same.
I'll push back on that. But I'll say this: going from the Novus Ordo to the traditional Mass felt more natural than it did going back to my first Novus Ordo after attending the traditional Mass for a long time, right? But when I really did start taking my faith seriously, I never thought the Catholic Mass was not Catholic. Like, I never felt like it wasn't Catholic. I understand what you mean. I understand what you mean by, like,
what
I think with the Novus Ordo is. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The Mass is, I mean, as long as it's approved by the church, it's Catholic, right? What I meant is the culture did not feel
the culture
Catholic.
is definitely
the people did not feel, and I don't mean this negatively in any way.
Rob, here's what I'll say to that, though. What you have with the Latin Mass are intentional Catholics.
Yes,
okay?
Almost definitely.
So you have people, so it's almost like, okay, so when I took my kids to sign them up for catechism, and I went to the Latin Mass, diocesan Latin Mass parish, the woman said to me, when she found out I went to the Latin Mass, she goes, "Well, you go to the Latin Mass, I'm not worried. You can catechize your kids." And all. So it's you have this group who are intentionally Catholic, whereas the Novus Ordo, a lot of people that go, and it's not all, it's definitely not. Like, Haley loves the Novus Ordo. Phil loves the Novus Ordo. You do have intentional Catholics at the Novus Ordo, but there are also a lot of people who go for heaven insurance, right? Because they've been going since they were a kid, or their parents.
Right, it's just routine. Whereas, like with Latin Mass, you have to you deliberately choose to go to Latin Mass. There's not a lot of people who just
so that's where the cultural difference comes from, Rob. So you're finding people who are really dedicated to their faith. Where those people do exist in the Novus Ordo, there are plenty of people who are dedicated to their faith in the Novus Ordo. They're just mixed in with a lot of watered down cultural Catholics.
I mean, I get that because I was raised in the Novus Ordo. I didn't attend to TLM until 3 years ago, but it was more just the Novus Ordo I was raised in was, one of the more conservative, somewhat traditional Novus Ordos. I don't know.
See, for me, it was the opposite because when I was growing up, because we switched parishes later, like in my teen years, but when I was growing up, my territorial parish was very liberal. It was like, so to give you an idea, so one of my examples from my old parish, like my old liberal parish, was all the EHMCs would come around the altar in a circle and hold hands during the Our Father with the priests. Like, that's something I remember from, like, that liberal parish. It's like, we'd all be, like, holding hands, like, and then, like, almost other people would just come up to the altar and, like, hold hands in a circle for the Our Father. I don't know why. We had all the Gather Book songs. That's why, like, I know all the songs that Anthony plays before trivia every week. It's like, oh, yeah, those are the songs from my childhood. I remember all those. And then later on, I found a more reverent Novus Ordo, and then I found the Latin Mass. And then, because one of the things I always hear from people, too, is they're like, oh, well, what if, you just make the Novus Ordo more reverent? Like, what if we just make it, like, super reverent? We have the incense, we have all the smells and bells. And my response is always, no matter how reverent you make a Novus Ordo, you can have it be St. John Cantius, Latin Novus Ordo, all the smells and bells, everything. It's still not the same as the Latin Mass. Like, there's still a difference. There's still a different liturgical calendar. There's still prayers.
No, but there are people who, the point is, when you say that, let's make a reverent Novus Ordo, what you're saying is let's make it more like the traditional Mass. Right?
Yeah,
so it's
exactly.
Why not just go to the traditional Mass?
So when people say, like, reform of the reform, people want to keep reforming the Novus Ordo. Well, it's like, well, what's the end goal? Like, when is it reverent enough? Like,
well, I honestly, there's something to be said about what Phil's saying here, because of this whole church hopping until you find a comfortable parish thing. That is adding to the segregation in the church.
Yeah.
It's adding to the schism, because if everybody did just go to their local parish, you would have less of these gay masses, the rainbow masses. You'd have less of those because there would be people pushing back at every parish. But because of this whole I'm going to go and find a church that suits me thing, that has added to the whole set. It's like everybody's going and finding one with like-minded people, and there's nobody to push back on any of these ideas. So I do understand, Phil, I'm not knocking what you're doing, and I don't say that what you're doing is wrong in any way. My mother still goes to that local Novus Ordo parish that I think is so atrocious, where there's all these liturgical abuses, because my mother says that's my parish, and I'm going to go, and I'm going to try and be a saint wherever God put me. Yeah. I disagree with her, but my mom's the most Catholic, holy woman I've ever known in my life. So I don't want this to become a debate on our channel about anybody that goes to the Latin Mass is better than somebody that goes to Novus Ordo. I don't believe that in any way whatsoever.
No, and I'm like one of the most simple people. Like, I go to confession like every week, go every other week. Because, like, I mean, I'm very aware of my sinfulness, but I'm just also saying that there's a peacefulness and there's just something more in the Latin Mass. The Latin language is transcendent. All week we hear the English language, we're surrounded by it. It's nice to just have a refuge. It's nice to just have a space that just has a separate language that is reserved exclusively for the liturgy. It's nice to just have your soul lifted up with Gregorian chant and just be able to rest in that and just not have to just hear the sing-songy songs. Like, it's just, there's a peacefulness.
Yeah, they made it corny. They made it corny. Look, there's no way around that, right? They made it corny. That's why we start our trivia show off with those goofy songs, because they're corny. They're corny, but at the same time, I really do, like, sometimes when I hear some of the songs, they have a nostalgic feel to me. I know you hate them. Look, Haley yesterday mentioned the glory Glory to God. I've been singing that all day in my head.
At the same time, it's not about what we like.
No, it's not about what we like.
Glory on HLC's day.
All right, let's go back to the article. Let's see. There's a parish closer to me, I am told. Does a Reverend Nova Sordo run by the Benedictines? I still won't go. It's a beautiful parish just off the main road. It would be perfect for the Latin Mass. Yeah, look, you're never going to change. Somebody that loves the traditional Mass, you're never going to sell them on the Nova Sordo. And somebody that really loves the Nova Sordo, I don't know if you'll be able to sell them on the traditional Mass. I don't like this idea that we're at odds with one another, though.
There was a comment I just saw from Jay who said, why do a lot of Catholics have to make an idol of the liturgy? Because the liturgy is, part of the liturgy is the Eucharist. And the Eucharist,
you have to define idol.
Yeah, define idol, but the liturgy should be the most important thing we do because the Mass is the holy sacrifice of Christ. So I don't think it's wrong.
No, listen, I think what he's saying is there are people who make I don't know if it's a weird thing to say an idol of the liturgy.
You can't make an idol of the Mass.
But Jay, what I'll say is,
right.
If you're saying that towards the people that go to the traditional Mass, what I'll say is, here's what it's like. So when I started going to the traditional Mass, it's like I discovered this thing that had been hidden from me my whole life. And it's this thing that's really part of the tradition of the church since the days of the apostles. And it's like, when you find out that that's been hidden from you and then you discover it, you're like, holy cow, this is the greatest thing in the world. Everybody needs to get this. Everybody needs to experience this. You don't understand. It's like when you first fall in love with the faith, it's almost like a second being on fire for something, right? Yeah. It's like, when you first came back to the faith, you went on fire for the faith.
And then when you start to realize that if it hadn't been already, but was beginning to begun being purposefully hidden from you and other people, that really gets you ticked off.
So look, we SSPX does what? Make an idol of the Mass. Look, you can find no, Phil, you're wrong. I'm not saying the traditional Latin, the 1962 Missal was there from the days of the apostles, but the Roman Rite has been there since the days of the apostles. When Paul goes around,
Peter wrote the canon.
when Paul goes around saying, and when he says, the things that we give you, whether through epistle or hold fast to the traditions which we hand down to you, whether through epistle or word of mouth. Those things that are word of mouth was the liturgy. The way they taught people the faith was through the liturgy, because you live out the liturgy. It's the way you embody the faith, right? So yes, there have been developments in it, and it may not look exactly the same as in the days of the apostles, but it does have its roots. So if you had the apostles come back to the liturgy pre-Vatican Council and post-Vatican Council, one of them is going to seem a little more realistic to them than the other, right? It's just I'm not even going to try and, I don't want this show to become the show that Haley and Angela had last night. That's really not what I was trying to do. Yeah, you're right, Phil. It wasn't Greek. A lot of it, especially, but then as the centuries went on, they changed it to into Latin. It was really Gregory, Pope Gregory.
He codified it, yeah, but the liturgy had been begun in Latin probably 2 to 3 centuries before that.
But Gregory wanted everything in uniform in the Western Rite. So it was Gregory,
the Gregorian Rite.
The Gregorian Rite. So it was Pope Gregory who said, "Look, everything's got to be the same." And there was logic behind that. So Phil, also think of it like this, right? Like if you're if the whole church is using the Latin Mass, you would be, say you're in a South American country, you will go to Mass and Mass is the same. It's like, I think there's something so beautiful about having a universal language for the church, where the Christian community and the Catholic
universal language for the universal church. Wouldn't that be
incredible? Means universal of the whole.
It's this something so beautiful about, no matter where in the world you go, you'll know what's going. You may not understand the homily, but you know the creed, you know the Gloria, you know the Sanctus, you know, like these are things that you will know intuitively.
Catholics all around the world were all celebrating the same feast days at the same time. Like a perfect example is this upcoming Sunday in the revised 1969 calendar is Christ the King, whereas originally Christ the King was intended to be the last Sunday in October, leading up to All Saints and All Souls Day. And that was totally changed with 1969. So now we have some Catholics where this Sunday is Christ the King for them, whereas for other Catholics, it's the 24th Sunday after Pentecost. So we don't even have like any unison there. There's a lot of shifting of feast days after Christmas, even with the baptism of our Lord, the Feast of Holy Family. Those have been moved around. So it's just, wouldn't it be beautiful if all Catholics are all together? Like we can just go anywhere in the world and it's Christ the King on one day. It's this feast, it's that, or it's this fasting day or that fasting day. We're all fasting in unison.
I never understood
how powerful would that be.
There are saints who say they had a devotion to the Mass, and I didn't grasp that until I attended a traditional Mass where you could actually love the Mass, right?
Yeah.
Like I had always loved going to Mass because I was receiving Christ in the Eucharist. I always, it was always I have to go to Mass, but it was
nothing engaging about
in the Mass. It was very begrudgingly, and I would really be upset with myself because I was having a hard time paying attention, and it was just a very difficult thing for me to. So when I would listen to Scott Hahn talk, and he would talk about this is where heaven meets earth, and the angels and the saints are around us, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm having a hard time seeing the veil lifted. And then when I attended my first traditional liturgy, it seemed like that veil was partially lifted for me. And it was more there's something so transcendent about the traditional liturgy.
It's a glimpse of heaven. It's truly a glimpse of what we'll be experiencing in heaven. I'm not saying we'll all be speaking Latin in heaven. I don't know how that's going to work out, but it's just the gloriousness of
the liturgy itself, right? So look, we even stopped, when with the Novus Ordo, it's not just the Mass that stopped. It's these processions.
Yes.
And it's like there would be when we would go to a new land, we would have these processions where they would march the Eucharist through in a monstrance, and the people would look on and they'd be so intrigued by our pomp and ceremonies and things that it would make them want to convert because they saw this like, what God are they worshiping? What is going on here?
Yeah.
So it's like this actually did convert the Western world, seeing these seeing these ceremonies that we were performing, and those all but disappeared after the council. I mean, John Paul II kind of revived Eucharistic adoration, but it was gone until he tried to revive it. Where are we next in the article?
Let me show that here. So the next part is kind of what I based the whole title of the show around, whether or not Pope Francis,
Enoch, that was my point, not Rob's. Sorry.
Would you let Rob talk?
No. So Enoch gave Rob credit for my brilliant comment. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, so my what I really want to explore with this is whether or not Pope Francis has failed with his goals in Traditionis Custodes. And it says here that the growth in the TLM is happening as Pope Francis has cracked down, issuing strict new limits last year, while Benedict widened access to the Old Mass. Francis has characterized it as a source of division in the Church and said it is too often associated with the broader rejection of the aims of the Second Vatican Council. So, taking Pope Francis in the most charitable sense, he wanted to use Traditionis Custodes to unite what he saw as a division in the Church by reducing the TLM to get people to move to the Novus Ordo. I think that's pretty much accepted at this point, right? As what he's trying to do.
Yeah. Well, he said that he wants to make the Novus Ordo the what was his phrase, like the only form of Mass,
the unique expression of the
Roman Mass. That's what it is.
Doesn't this article, by being published, show that he's failed?
Okay, but wait. Here's the thing. There is a point to be made that if we're using the Latin Mass as a rallying point to resist Francis, that is problematic.
Well,
it's not to resist. It's just that he's
Margo, you can say that. You can say that.
Some people it is.
There are people using the traditional Mass as a rallying point against Francis. And that
just as some people use the Novus Ordo to rally against the conservative teachings of
the traditional
Vitae and
listen, this goes on both sides. What I'm trying to just look, I'm trying to call out the people who think like me, because we're the ones that I see every week, right? And I'm not worried about the Mike Lewises and the Austin Ivorys. They're doing their thing. I am worried about the people who I love and I have communion with and who I'm going to Mass with every Sunday. And if we're going to Mass and we're at the Mass talking gossip about how can you believe Francis did that? This is why Rob and I don't do that on this channel. And this episode is probably the closest we've ever come to it. And I am really trying to make sure that that is not where we're going with this, because I just don't think the traditional Mass is the rallying point for Catholicism. The Pope is the rallying point for Catholicism. It's the point of unity.
He's the principle of unity in the church.
He is the principle of unity.
Yeah.
And when you see that people are using the traditional Mass in that way, that is wrong. And I have to try. Look, you can't always take everything that you hear coming from Francis as, you really can't look at it with a hermeneutic of suspicion. I know people hate that phrase and things like that, but there really is an aspect of that where it's like everything Francis says, we just have to jump on right away. Like, you can't do that. You have to try to just we have to try to make sense of the things that are going on right now and live the best thing you can do is try to live out a holy life, right?
Just live a holy life. Yeah. Pray your rosary every day. Stick to your other private devotions that you feel called to. Love others, love your family, grow and raise your family, go to Mass, receive the sacraments, go to confession, just try to go closer to Christ ultimately. That's what should be most important. And we have to remember too that we're living in a very strange age. For most of Catholic history, people did not know everything the Pope was doing or saying every single moment. There was sometimes in history where people probably didn't even know the Pope's name because there were no newspapers, there was no printing press, there was no social media. Like nowadays, we're living in this world where the second Pope Francis says something, everyone just jumps on it and stuff. And I mean, I'm not saying that I'm innocent or anything, so I'm a commentary junkie. That's how I am. I love commentary. Right. But I also just try to pray for him and just, be like, okay, this is the Pope we have right now.
Jim, what do you mean by this?
Because I find the opposite, actually. Personally,
Jim, I don't know what you mean by this, because I've never seen more small children anywhere than at the traditional Mass. Like, I mean,
and I've never seen people that cared less about
the biggest distraction I have at the traditional Mass is fighting the urge not to make faces at the beautiful little children in the front row in front of me. Like, I love little kids. Like, I adore them. And when I see like a cute little baby in front of me turns around and they're standing on the pew facing me, I can't help but that's the most distracting thing for me at Mass, because I adore little children.
See, Anthony, you making faces is what would be distracting to me.
Yeah, I would try not to, and I wouldn't let you see it, and I would go like this. And I would stick my tongue out, but I would try to make that little kid laugh. So I don't know. I want to try to understand. I always try to see.
I think it's because maybe it's much quiet. Like the Latin Mass is quieter, especially a low Mass. Like
there's always cry rooms, though. There's always a place. You could always go into the.
There's always a narthex.
The narthex.
Yeah, there's always a narthex.
It's just not at some churches.
Yeah, in the round. But I try to understand where the people who don't agree with me are coming from. Like, I really do try to see it from that. Rob, that is exactly my problem. Cute babies who sit in the pew in front of us.
I know what you're thinking.
See?
He's calling me Rob. He doesn't know I'm Anthony. That's what he's saying.
Well,
I am so excited to go on Enoch's show on Monday. You have no idea. We are just
at this point. It looks like it's going to be just me.
Listen to me. It's just Rob going on. Apparently, if anybody doesn't know, Rob and I are both going on Fawaz's show.
Both of you on at the same time.
I actually might let Rob talk this episode, so everybody stay tuned. I might let Rob get a word in. We'll see how it goes. All right, Rob, why don't you read the next section? Let's see where this is going.
Okay.
Enoch is literally one of my favorite people in the world, by the way. He's like...
So on one level, the split over the mass represents a clash of priorities and power struggles in church leadership. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the bishops do or think, so I really don't care.
I think a lot of the bishops like the traditional mass.
They do, because that's one of the things that we researched at Mass of the Ages. I can't say too much about our upcoming plans for 2023, but we're expanding and we're going to be doing some stuff to increase the number of Latin masses in the country. But one of the things we've seen is that there's actually not as many restrictions as you would think. Like, I mean, yes, you have the well-known in Chicago and DC.
You know what my bishop did when Traditionis Custodes was enacted?
Nothing.
Yeah.
I don't
kind of got lucky. We didn't have a bishop.
I get it. So look, it's like I think that there's 2, maybe 3 Latin Mass parishes in my diocese. We're all solid communities. We don't do the whole dude, Enoch, honestly, like you're one of my favorite people, man. So, but yeah, my bishop, like we're solid communities. We have things in our parish where the young men will get together and they do things. They have they do the XP90 or whatever it is.
Exodus 90.
Exodus 90, whatever it is. So like they do like they have once a month they all meet after mass and they hang out in the cafeteria and they have a brunch kind of thing. And it's not getting into the whole drama of the church. We're trying to build a community. Enoch is in Kentucky. My cousin moved down to Kentucky. My cousin had no idea he was going to this parish. My cousin moves to Kentucky and is terrified and wants to sell the house he just bought because he doesn't know anybody. He goes to this parish and he gets the most warm welcome imaginable from these people at this parish. Enoch invites him to his house. They have such a beautiful, and my cousin told me the priest is kind of on his way out, and it has nothing to do with the priest. It has everything to do with the young men at this parish wanting to build community. So he had his house right back on the market when he moved there because he was terrified. He just took it off the market. He said, Anthony, I wouldn't leave here for all the money in the world. These are like, I feel like I have a home with these men. They get together all the time. They go to cigar lounges. They have friendsgivings at each other's houses. The kids are all playing together. They have a community for the homeschooling kids. And it's just such an awesome thing. It's like, yeah, dude, it's just like, I mean, listen, Enoch, I'm going to hit you up and put you on the spot and ask you for Ray, what's his name? Grabal?
Ray, yeah.
Joy of the Faith. Just say Joy of the Faith.
We know he goes to your parish, and we're going to put you on the spot and ask you to get us an interview with him. So, yeah, they have an awesome parish down there. So I'm a little jealous, but I do have Don at my parish, and that's very, very cool.
Your favorite person.
Steve Holman says, do PX90 get ripped on Skrish? Listen, this is what you guys are here for, to make fun of me. I'm really excited for Monday. All right, Rob, keep on reading on, brother. Let's go. What are we at? 58 minutes. You guys got me for another 20, and then Margot's taking over, and I'm going to bed.
Many Catholics say they are attracted to the Mass for spiritual reasons, bolstered by aesthetic and liturgical preferences rather than by partisanship. And I would say that's my experience.
Wait, say that again. What was that?
They like the aesthetics and liturgical, preferences. They don't care about the partisanship.
Yeah, I agree. Keep going.
There's a reverence that's next level. Dozens of large young families have flocked to St. Joseph's Shrine since it began offering the TLM regularly in 2016. It was a historically German parish with a 19th century building that used to struggle to keep the lights on. Now it's bustling with people, including many couples with 5 or more children.
I 100% agree with that.
The FSSP parish in Minneapolis was like that too. The diocese was actually going to sell the church, but a priest in the diocese who said the TLM and knew the FSSP introduced the FSSP to the bishop, and the FSSP bought the church, and now it's one of the busiest
parish.
It's one of the busiest in the diocese.
The Holy Innocents in Manhattan is the only parish in Manhattan that offers a daily Latin Mass, 2 Latin Masses on Sunday, and confession 3 times a day, 7 days a week. Do you know how priceless that is? To find a parish that offers confession 3 times a day. My first Latin Mass was on accident because I was working in Manhattan, needed to go to confession, went on the website and said confession in Manhattan, found the only parish that had confession on a weekday at 5:00. I went there, and right after confession was over, there was a Latin Mass going on, my first Latin Mass. So Margot, you said you had to fight to stay in it. Rob, what was your first experience?
So it was I think it was a holy day of obligation. I forget which one. So I needed to go to Mass, and the best time that worked that day was a Mass at a local parish from where I was working at noon, so during my lunch hour. But it was a Latin Mass. It was a low Mass, so I showed up. It was one of the parishes I actually grew up in, so I was kind of comfortable with that. I knew the priest. He was the priest that had been there from when I was growing up. So all in all, really comfortable with that. But it was probably about 20 minutes into the Mass until I realized that, hey, the Mass was actually going on. Like, you know what I mean? Like I didn't know when it had started, but suddenly I realized, oh, I think we're in the middle of Mass right now. And I felt so out of place trying to follow along in the little booklet. It was a low Mass, so it was entirely silent. I mean, entirely silent the whole time. And at the end of it, it just felt so alien to me, indifferent, and I felt so uncomfortable, even at a parish I grew up in with the priest I knew, a priest I served with from when I was a teenager. It was just, I don't know, if it left me very uncomfortable, but there was something there where I knew I had to learn more, and I was learning about it.
What made you go to that one originally? Actually, I'm sorry.
The timing. It was on a holy day of obligation. It was during my lunch hour, and it just worked out well.
So it was kind of by accident.
Yeah, it wasn't purposeful. It was the year Maddie was born, so 2019.
2019. So you saw this. Now, were you intrigued enough to say, I need to learn more about this?
Yeah, because I knew enough. I knew enough that it was the Mass that, that it was the traditional Mass that my ancestors would have gone to. And like I said, I grew up in this parish where it was a parish that had never not had the TLM. It had had a TLM during the bad old indult days. But the parish was bifurcated completely, right? The TLM people didn't go to the Novus Ordo. The Novus Ordo
really?
people. I didn't even know anyone at the parish that went to the TLM.
See, so Benedict wanted, when he put in the motu proprio, he wanted the extraordinary form to enrich the ordinary form, and the ordinary form to enrich the extraordinary form. Like, that's really what the point was. And really, you were having a bifurcated parish, and it wasn't doing what it was supposed to do.
And that was because during the indult days, it was one of maybe 2 parishes in like the whole upper Midwest that had the TLM,
and I don't think
so that part of the parish was coming from forever away.
One of my questions is, how does, I understand how the Latin Mass can enrich the Novus Ordo, obviously, but how does the Novus Ordo enrich the Latin Mass?
People.
The people, but because if the Latin Mass is the full or something, it's what does the Latin Mass have, or what does the Novus Ordo have that the Latin Mass does not have, I guess, would be my question.
I'm sorry, say that again. What was the question?
What does the Novus Ordo have that the Latin Mass is missing? Is there something missing in the Latin Mass?
So here's what I'll tell you. If you go, I actually like my diocesan Latin Mass better than the SSPX parish, the chapel that's next to me, right?
With Anthony,
SSPX.
everyone.
I'm sorry, I'm on second beer. So I do go to the SSPX chapel occasionally. I like the diocesan better because it has a more home feel to it. Okay, where if I go to the SSPX and my listen, sometimes you go to mass and you're away and you're out of town and you forget your veil. Like the girls forget their veils.
But both those are masses, like the diocesan and the SSPX. Those are both TLM.
Yes. So listen to what I'm saying. I'm telling you how the Novus Ordo enriched the diocesan, enriched the TLM. So here's how. When you there's a strictness and and there is a rigidity to certain places where you go to Latin Mass so when me and my wife have traveled, there have been times where my wife and the kids forgot their veils at home. And if you go to an SSPX chapel, there's going to be somebody's going to hand you a veil and make you feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
Some woman there is going to come and say something to you. Where when you go to a diocesan traditional mass, there's something about just, it doesn't matter what you're wearing. People are just so grateful to see you there. And there's a more at home feeling to it. And I do think the Novus Ordo has had an effect on that, where it's there's a softness to it that I don't find at the SS. And I'm not knocking people that go to the SSP. I'm just saying this is anecdotal. This is in my experience. I'm not saying this is across the board. I can only tell you my personal experience.
When things become insular, they develop their own, idiosyncrasies. It's bound to happen. So the more you get that mixture, the more even keeled it all becomes.
That's what it just seems. It seems a little more even keeled, and that's why I'm saying, like Rob's saying, that that bifurcated parish never interacted with one another. Where I do see that there are people who, with that parish that has the first and third Sunday, some people go to the traditional mass on the first and third, and they stay at that parish. That's their parish, right?
Yeah.
So they have been influenced by the traditional, and I see even when they have a Novus Ordo there's a line at the communion rail, because those are the people that go to the traditional mass and they're at that communion rail, even at a Novus Ordo, no matter what.
Yeah.
So it does have an effect under the right circumstances.
I just saw a thing from Mac. He was saying Gregorian, Guitar Masses rock. And I'm just like, yes, exactly. Those are my favorite kind, Mac.
So if Matt doesn't start with smoke machines and guitars plugged into Marshall amps, is it even Catholic?
Exactly.
So Jay, you should come and hang with us for trivia one night, man. You'd fit right in. The whole just throwing little comments out, making jokes and stuff. That's really what trivia is all about. With trivia tomorrow night, I'm meeting a Catholic though.
To get back to your original question to me though, Anthony, at the end of that mass, I didn't know if I wanted to go back to a TLM. But like I said, I knew the history, and growing up, even at a parish that had it, I thought it was just the mass I was used to, but in Latin. And when I saw how untrue that was, I knew I at least needed to figure out why. And the more I learned, the more I realized, like, even if as of right now, I don't like the TLM, right? Even though I'm uncomfortable with it, it's not what I'm used to. It's like, all the arguments for it made it clear to me, like, this is, and I know this is going to cause issues, but this is superior. Then there are reasons for it, and I need to change myself to fit the church instead of what happened in the 60s when they changed the church to fit the culture.
And we're never supposed to do that. Like, whenever, like, God doesn't change to suit us, we change to conform to Christ. Not Christ changing, not Christ, loosening up so that, like, he conformed to us, we conform to him. And that's what's supposed to happen even in the liturgy. And I just agree with you 100%. Like, even for me, again, like, I fought it for a while. Do we have some moderator? I have some icky stuff in the chat. I fought it for a while, but for me, the biggest things that kept me coming back was just the beauty of it, and then just, again, the liturgical count of being a crazy liturgical nerd, and just, like I had to stick with one or the other. I had to make a choice at a certain point. I couldn't keep going back and forth, and the Latin Mass is what won me.
So what do you say to Phil when Phil says that you're going against the church because the church
I would say, I dare you to point to a single point where I've gone against the church.
And how can we be going against the church if we're just sticking with the tradition?
I understand what Phil's saying. Right. Phil said, even with church, Phil, you're not incorrect, right? So you're not incorrect.
Church, I go to my local parish.
Yeah, Rob does. So that's the thing. Rob would have to drive 4 hours to go to a Latin Mass. So he only does it on special occasions. It's not Rob. Yeah. And Rob says, I see nowhere where there should be an exception that I could avoid going to Mass. So Rob goes to the Novus Ordo, Phil. Rob does not church hop. And not just that, Rob is involved with his parish. Rob has his priest over. So it's nobody's encouraging this. No. I'm sorry, Phil's saying but you're not encouraging this?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure what you mean there, Phil. Phil, what all we're saying is if there is somewhere within a reasonable distance to go, all we're saying is you'll find a more intentional Catholic community. That's what I've found. And I find it's
And where do people's obligations lie more? In the raising of their children or in their supporting of their local parish?
Yeah. For me,
I'm pretty sure the church makes it pretty clear our obligation is first to our children.
Yeah, and I can speak from personal experience only, and this is anecdotal as well. My children have benefited immensely from bringing them to the traditional Mass. Like the catechesis in the Mass itself, just my kids seeing this is not a regular piece of bread has transformed their faith. Like,
I mean, even just like the little tiny details, like seeing the priest genuflect so many times during the Mass in the Latin Mass, like, and just you don't see like those my
kids may not pick up on that.
They may not pick up on that right away, but they'll still see the this is something that's being treated very differently. Like
the music alone has my kids have. So all right. So I have out of my kids, my son, he's full Catholic. Like he's no problem at all. He loves the faith. He's into it. I could talk to him about anything. My youngest is so eager to learn. I'm teaching her catechism. She's asking me questions about saints, this and that. My middle daughter is not as engaged. When she goes to a Novus Ordo, she didn't receive last time at the Novus Ordo because she told me, Dad, I just felt like I was judging everybody around me so much. Like the music, I was judging the woman singing, and I just felt guilty even receiving. Like she felt like in her heart she was looking around and judging the nonsense going on so much that she felt in her heart she couldn't receive. And she's the one that's least engaged. Where my wife, my son, and my youngest daughter all received that Mass, and my middle daughter, who's the least engaged, felt guilty because of the judging she was doing to the other people who were goofing around at Mass. There's people who let their kids play with toys, and this is all anecdotal. I'm not saying this happens everywhere. This is all I can tell you. So bringing my middle daughter, who has the hardest time being engaged with the Mass, she engages way more with the traditional Mass than she does with the Novus Ordo. I know that's a subjective thing. I can only speak from subjection in that area, though.
For those who say we absolutely must go to our local parishes, no matter how terrible they are, I guess my question to them would be, how many times am I obligated to allow my wife to leave the church crying in tears because of the irreverence shown? How many times? Am I supposed to do it every time?
And it should break your heart. It should make you cry. And that's actually a gift your wife had. If she left crying, that's a gift that God gave her, that she was able to internalize. What a sacrilege that is, right? Like that's the gift of tears. That's not nothing. That's a beautiful gift that God gave her. What she saw led her to tears, because we're dealing with the sacrifice of Calvary.
Exactly.
That's what we're going there for. We're going there for the sacrifice of Calvary. Now, when you're seeing a priest with a guitar blessing people and everybody's goofing around and the priest tells a funny joke, it's just taking you away from.
And it's just it can just be so casual sometimes too. Like you can just see it, just it's like okay, it's just we're doing this again. It can just become routine over almost. Whereas at the Latin Mass, like there's just something deep about it. There's just a depth to the Latin Mass.
Well, Phil says to just leave, but Phil, that's why people church hop, because they don't want to have to leave. I mean, Phil, you're choleric temperament. you're very adamant, and I understand that. Like I get it. Like, and I'm not trying to be combative with you. I would love to get you on and have a conversation with you, because it's hard to see your comment and your tone. Like if you'd ever want to come on, I'd have you on to have a conversation about it. Just have an action, not a debate. I don't want to debate these things. I'd like to hear your experience in the Novus Ordo, what you find joyful in it, why you prefer it. Are you against the traditional Mass? I'd love to hear from somebody from your perspective, because I don't want to not understand the people who have a different perspective from me. Aaron says, from a guy who's gone to TLM my whole life with only a few Novus Ordo Masses, the TLM is not preference, it's about the faith. I couldn't go to the I know a lot of people who feel that way. I'll still go to the Novus Ordo.
I haven't gone to a Novus Ordo probably since 2017. It's like I think it would be a cultural shock for me. Like I haven't been back to one. I don't know what it would be like. I think I would forget what to do almost at a certain point. Like it's been
if you
so
ever
long.
go to one, make sure someone records it, because I want to put it on our channel.
Terry. So Terry is a convert, right? So Terry is coming. I think she's in RCIA right now. Terry, if you ever want to come on and tell your conversion story, I would love to hear it.
100%.
I would love to hear your conversion story. Phil says, I don't prefer the Novus Ordo. I wish I was still at a traditional Mass, but it has nothing to do with me. That's understandable too. Look, that's a fair statement, right? Phil is saying, this is my local parish, that's where I'm going to go. Phil, I'm not judging you for that in any way. I don't think you're wrong for that.
We're not judging you. Like I'm talking about the Novus Ordo. I'm just talking about the two forms of Mass. I'm not talking about anyone who attends one or the other. Like, and that's the thing. Is like, oh well, like all the trads who go to Latin Mass say, I'll hate Pope Francis, and all those like the rigid, bad trads. And then all the people who go to Novus Ordo, all this like. Let's stop talking about the people who are attending. Can we just talk about the two forms of Mass
liturgy itself? Yeah, I don't like this. I don't like the idea of. I hate when somebody who attends the Novus Ordo feels like I'm criticizing them when I criticize the liturgy. It is not anyone's fault that they're in the liturgy they're in. It's not
right. And right now we're all trying to figure out, what to do in this world that we're living in. Like there's just this crazy world right now. So I don't judge anyone. I don't even judge Sadie. Like I don't agree with Sadie Vicanis with that position, but I don't judge them because I understand we're in a very weird place in the church right now. So
I think a lot of people. I think I'm in a similar spot. I try not to judge anybody's motives or.
You know what bothers me most about Traditionis custodes?
What?
When, like you're just saying, when a lot of times when traditional-minded Catholics give an appraisal of the Novus Ordo, it is of the liturgy itself, right? Yet Traditionis custodes seems to be an appraisal of those who attend the TLM. It makes no mention of the TLM itself. It makes no mention of the liturgy or the theology behind it. It doesn't criticize anything about that. It criticizes the people there.
Yeah.
That hurts coming from the Pope, from the head of the church, from your spiritual father. That freaking hurts.
It does.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that's what we try to do with Mass of the Ages is that, like, with Mass of the Ages, we're trying to show we're just trying to invite people to the beauty of the Latin Mass. We're just trying to show, like, it's not about the people or anything. We're just trying to show. We're trying to explain. We're trying to catechize. We're trying to just show the beauty and introduce people to this form of Mass and get it away from all the heated debates.
Now was Wozy Woes saying I made a great point?
I think past your bedtime.
Listen. Enoch's been mistaking Rob for me all night, so I don't know. I do want to say something about Carl's comment. So, Carl, my wife was Missouri Synod Lutheran, and for her, going from the Missouri Synod Lutheran service to the Novus Ordo,
it was actually less conservative, wasn't it?
Less conservative than the Lutheran was. So the Lutherans would go and they would kneel and they would treat this bread that was with Christ, the consubstantiation, more reverently than the Novus Ordo parish. So now I do want to ask this. Okay, so so my first experience of that Latin Mass was accidental. I wanted to go to confession. I went to this traditional Mass on accident, and I was blown away. I felt like I was seeing something transcendent. I had something totally different from you two.
Were you at a high Mass?
No, a low Mass. And I didn't know what was going on. Same thing as you. I didn't know it started. But once I just saw the priest facing the altar and I didn't know what was going on, and it intrigued me so much. And I didn't know when to kneel. I didn't know when to stand. And I was just following everybody's lead. But it just left me like, wait a minute. What did I do? I felt like I was witnessing some ancient ritual that I was like, what is going on here? I was so intrigued by it that I went home and I started researching. And that's how Taylor Marshall didn't introduce me to Latin Mass. The Latin Mass introduced me to Taylor Marshall.
Exactly. Literally that day when I got, I don't work for that company anymore, so it's not going to matter. When I got back to work from that Mass, I spent the rest of that day scouring the internet for everything I could find about the TLM. I read articles from 1 Peter 5 for the first time. I read articles written by Eric Sammons for the first time. I watched videos from Taylor Marshall for the first time on headphones at my desk, hoping no one would see. I mean, all of it, because it's like,
it was like a reconversion.
It was, yeah.
It was like a reconversion.
And it took place within 6 months of me actually coming back to the church. So it was like a reconversion.
A reconversion, right? So
one of the things I just thought of too is that it's interesting because you guys both have said, like, you know, at the low Mass, like, you don't even know Mass has started. And that's kind of one of the beautiful things because, like, at the Novus Ordo, you know when Mass starts because the priest greets you and it's like, hello, everyone, or house on the greeting. Like, let's begin this Mass in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. Holy Spirit. But at the Latin Mass, like, the thing is so powerful for me every single time, and this is like my little obsession, is I love the Judica Me psalm that's at the beginning of every Mass, because it's, I will go unto the altar of God, unto God to give joy to my youth. I will, like, that is the perfect way to start Mass. It's the priest saying, I will go unto the altar of God. Like, that is the perfect introduction to Mass. Like, that is how we should be starting Mass, like saying that we're going to the altar of God, the God who gives joy to our youth. And then it just flows from there. It just has a nice flow and everything to it. And then there's just so much nice. And then the priest greeting us, and I'm just like, I don't want to be greeted. I just want to pray. Like,
Terry, this is similar to what I would describe it as, that my soul recognized it. So
and I would actually, might surprise you, but I would describe it the same way. It's just that I needed to get my mind to catch up to it. I needed my intellect to catch up to it.
Yeah, so I had no idea what was going on, right? So now, okay, so what I was getting at is that now I'm so intrigued, and I'm researching this, and I'm finding out I had no idea all this stuff happened at Vatican II. None of it. I was a Scott Hahn, I was a Lighthouse Catholic.
Oh yeah, Lighthouse
Catholic. Like, that's who I was. I was into Steve Ray.
So
that's who I was, right?
Yeah.
So now I try to get my wife to come. And my wife goes to her first one, and we had an argument beforehand, and my wife winds up weeping at her first Latin Mass, but I don't know if it was because we were arguing ahead of time. Like, I'm not sure what was going on. You argue with
your wife? I can't imagine that.
So now my wife goes, so my wife's an artist, and she has very perceptive of beauty, and she saw something beautiful there. Now, she wasn't crazy about me asking her to wear a veil. That took a little bit longer. After attending, it took, I'd say, 4 or 5 traditional Masses before my wife and children joined. My son was there with me immediately. My son went to, he was with me immediately. He loved it too. My daughters and my wife, not so easily. And it took a little while, and they were a little resistant at first. They weren't crazy about the veil thing. And then now they're so in love with it that they would never go back. But I'm wondering from for a female's perspective, so Terry's saying her soul recognized it right away, but I don't think that's the typical experience of women, right? Like women have a harder time.
Jumped into it faster and harder than I did.
But she's coming from a Protestant background. Maybe she needed that radical.
Because, the theology was so radically different, right? Coming to the church. But yet what she was seeing wasn't that different.
Listen, Phil.
Phil, you just went up like 10 notches in my book.
Okay, to get this back on track where you boys are laughing. For me, like, I spoke to my soul. Like, I saw the beauty of it. But again, I was just so attached to them. Sort of like, it's hard for me to change. It's hard for me. Like, I was so, like, it's all I knew. The Novus Ordo. I didn't want to, like, I was resisting it. But one thing I did always love, though, was veiling. Like, as soon as I found out about veiling, I loved it. I, like, bought a whole bunch of veils. So I just thought they were beautiful. And I was just like, this is so cool, the lace and stuff. And now I have, like, a whole bunch of them. And I like to color coordinate them based on the liturgical season. Because, yes, I am that much of a liturgical nerd where I try to color match and everything to the liturgical season. So so basically like 2 weeks, I'll be going all purple all the time, basically for Advent. So I mean, I love the veiling. The actual landmass, I liked it, but again, it was so different. It was hard to get used to. But once I did, and once I again learned all about it, like then I was just hooked.
So real quick, Don and I met because Don saw me interacting with Steve Skojek on Twitter. And he recognized me from my Twitter profile. And he actually, Don is so quiet, and Don actually confronted me. And I can't believe he did. It was the first time I was ever recognized from Twitter. I mean, it was like a weird thing.
Yeah, I was recognized from Twitter for the first time at the Daily Wire backstage event I went to this past June. So I'm like, in line for the event. And so someone comes up to me and it's like, "Are you Margot from Turtle? I'm this girl Hillary." And she's like, "I'm Hillary," and she told not to be Catholic. And we started talking. He's like, "I follow you on Twitter, and she can get a selfie with you." And it's like, "Oh my gosh, I have a fan."
If any of you ever see me in real life and say you know me from Twitter, I will deny it. So
really quick, we now have a CIA agent in the chat, guys. So everybody, chill out with the.
Wait, what?
The
Flanders isn't here.
No, but Steve Junot is.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Steve's CIA. We know that. So let's not discuss the future insurrection we've been talking about the whole time.
I just know I'm gonna meet Anthony next summer in person, so it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, that's right.
Because you're gonna be at the Coalition of Cancer Priest event next summer.
I'll be at that, and I'm also gonna be at Master of the Ages episode 3 premiere in Chicago.
Oh yeah, if we can get that off the ground, hopefully.
So if there's any women in the chat, did you have a similar experience that I described? Like, I think women are a little more hesitant and resistant at first, but then I think once they fall in love with it, they are almost more passionate than the men about it. Like they really do find the something beautiful about it, that the transcendence of it. Really, there's a lot of women do have a perception to beauty that men maybe overlook, and men are very, have a way of thinking intellectual, right? So
not in the sense that women
aren't smart. Rob,
Anthony has a whole video on that. But
look, Rob just said
I read almost all of Peter
women aren't smart.
Books.
Men are intellectual. Women are feelings based. I got it, Rob. It's okay.
I read all of Peter Kuzminski's books, basically, except he writes
Margot, you're just an emotional, erratic woman.
Okay,
just
now
hormonal.
Rob said it, not me. I mean, I think,
Anthony's going to just butcher this into clips that just kill me. I just know this already.
I'm cutting this one up. I can't wait. This is going to be a short. Rob saying women are just emotional and men are intellectual.
I'll show you emotional.
Is there anything else from the article we need to?
Let's see. Let's get back into that. I think this paragraph, I suppose you can't see my pointer. Leaning into the demands of intense religious experience, many supporters of the TLM seek a return not just to old rituals, but to old social values and gender roles. Here, the arcane and rigorous are not barriers to accessibility, but instead are attractions that tie believers into a long history of spiritual clarity, which they see as sharply contrasting with the modern church.
So, what do you think about that?
I think whoever wrote this is incredibly perceptive, because I think that's right on, right? Like, yeah, the rituals, the smells and bells, they're nice, they're reverent, they're amazing, beautiful, awesome, all of that. But what draws me to tradition isn't just that, it's everything that comes with it and that's attached to it. It's the seeing of our culture and our history through an actual Catholic lens, and not the modernist liberal lens that's been hoisted upon us, right?
And they're all, I'm amazed that it's a woman who wrote this article, because she's even saying like the traditional gender roles are, here the arcane rigorous are not barriers to accessibility, but attractions that tie believers to the long history of spiritual clarity, which they see as sharply contrasting with the modern church. So what we were talking about before with the girl altar boys and things like that, like there's something off that I think a lot of people have an intuitive sense about, right? It's like, there's something a little off about having women all over the altar and stuff. There was something very more than transcendent. It's like, I don't know, it's just like having the priest be this figure who really is our mediator between us and God.
Yeah. And then the Autor Christus, the in persona Christi, being in the person of Christ. That has an effect. And then one other thing I wanted to point out, too, this is all over the place, but I was just thinking too, just even the prayer that the priest says as he's giving you the Eucharist, he says, Corpus Domini Nostri Jesu Christi custodi animam tuam in vitam aeternam, amen. May the body
Why
of the Lord...
are you just trying to show off how much Latin you know?
Okay, I was reading it.
That's all you're doing.
I was reading off a page. No,
I know what you're doing.
No. I have an actual point to make. It's may the body of our Lord Jesus Christ preserve your soul unto life everlasting. Just to compare that with, like, when it's just body of Christ again, it's the normal sort of all this body of Christ. Whereas this is like, may the body of our Lord Jesus Christ preserve your soul unto life everlasting. That is beautiful. Like,
it is beautiful, and there's when we do it at the diocesan. When we do it at the diocesan traditional mass, there are priests who don't know the Latin mass who will come and assist at communion, because only a priest can give you communion, and they'll just say Corpus Christi, and I'm almost like, come on, it's like a little bit of a letdown.
Prayer. Like why did we remove all these beautiful prayers? Like, that's what hurts.
Now, also confession. When you go to a traditional priest, have you ever heard the confession, hearing absolution in Latin?
Yes. I don't know awesome. I've only heard the absolution in Latin. I don't actually know what it's translated to. Because I think the Novus Ordo, because I know all the sacraments will be written in the Novus
First
Ordo.
off, I just want everyone to give Brick a round of applause.
Well, okay, so this is why I kind of did want to speak about chastity, because somebody had actually...
here we go, round two.
Well, no, somebody had asked me in my comments, because I had mentioned the other day that it's been like, it's almost 3 years now for me. It's well over 2 years.
Please God.
And that was something where when I was at when I first converted, it was one of those sins where it's like every week you were back in confession because you kept slipping up. And it's like, and look, I'm not saying this, look, there are men who are in that position, right? Where at least you're going to confession and picking yourself back up and working on it and working on it and working on it. But there was something about when I started going to the traditional mass that I started taking my faith a little bit more seriously. And I had a priest. The first time I went a good 6 months, because even though it's been 3 years, there was before that, there was like a 6 month stretch. And it was because the priest that I went to confession to at Holy Innocents was a Chinese priest. You could barely understand them. And he told me, and it was like the third time I went to him. And he
do it in the accent.
No, I can't. Okay, I'll try.
Oh, gosh, no.
Okay, let's see. So I go to him, and he recognized my voice. Even though there was a screen there, he recognized me. And I told him, it's been, 2 weeks since I had my last confession. And I told him so. And he said, I tell you, I can't do it. I can't.
I
tell you.
Okay, we're done now.
No, finish your story, Anthony. Oh my gosh, pull yourself together.
Laddie. No. He said, set your phone alarm to 3 p.m. every day. And he said, and I want you to do this, and I want you to not put an end to this alarm. I want you to have every day at 3 p.m.
You killed Lou, and you killed him.
Finish the story. You're going to finish the story.
Very. I can't even do it. Next time I'll come back and I'll know a Chinese accent better.
Finish the story. You are not allowed to leave until you finish the story.
You must have a really hard time watching our shows, Margot.
Dude.
I got yelling at us.
Sometimes my laugh makes me laugh, even if I didn't say anything funny. It's like my laugh. I'm just
this
like,
is what I'm usually like in the comments section, but I'm just like yelling at the computer. But now I'm like, oh, I'm actually on camera, so I can't just yell like a crazy person.
All right, so this is what the priest tells me. This is my penance. Set my alarm every day for 3 p.m. And I want you to, at 3 p.m. every day, say a decade of either the Rosary or the Divine Mercy Chaplet. I did this. Jason, we might have to have you on. We might have to do this. I'll tell you what he said to me. So he tells me to set this alarm every day at 3 p.m. and say either a decade of the Divine Mercy or the Rosary. So I did it. I did a 6 month straight, because every day at 3 p.m. It wasn't go say 3 Our Fathers, go say 3 Hail Marys. It wasn't even what the priest said to me in Steubenville.
It was a reminder of your sin every day.
Every day, and it was at the hour of mercy, because 3 p.m. is when Christ dies, right? Yep. And it's like I had to stop whatever I was doing, and I'm working at 3 p.m. And if I'm listening to a podcast, whatever I was doing 3 p.m., I had to pray. And it gave me the strength to, when I got home from work that day, because for a lot of men, when they get home, they go in the bathroom after work, and their wife and kids are out in the house, and they're in the bathroom alone, and they'll lock the door, and that's a dangerous place to be. And it just, that 3 p.m. alarm every day really had a major effect on me. And then I did slip up, right?
Yeah.
But then I had this conversation with my cousin, and my cousin said, we were talking about like, all right, well, why is it that God doesn't give us the grace to do these things? Like, I don't understand why I keep slipping up with this thing. Like, you know, I'm going to mass every Sunday. I'm following the sacraments. I'm going to confession. Why am I still struggling with this? And my cousin said something that was so profound. He said, Anthony, God does give you the grace. You're neglecting it. Like you're ignoring the graces God is giving you. You have to make it up in your mind and just say, this is never happening again.
Yes.
And when I tell you, from the day I had that conversation with him, never again looked at it. This was 3 years ago. He said, Anthony, just stop like giving yourself the out. Like you just have to say, I'm never doing this ever again.
Yeah.
And it's like, and after you get past the 1 year mark, you're free of it. Like it just doesn't even cross my mind anymore. Like when I get home, like it's never even a thought in my mind. And what it also does is it makes you, especially if you're married, look, I understand it's a lot different for single guys, but if you're married and you're still struggling with this, you will find a love and an attraction to your wife like you haven't had in years. And your wife will be perceptive of that. And she will realize my husband only has eyes for me. There's no, you know, he's not like, it's almost like women can intuit when men are looking at things they shouldn't. They just have an intuition about it. And even if they, you know, you think you have them convinced you're not, there's something about when you're not looking at anything but your wife, she's the only thing that you ever have desire for. There's something very attractive about you to your wife about that.
Yeah, so and then Lauren was saying that I feel like it's good advice for any sort of addiction, 100%. Because I mean, there are things that I struggle with, the habitual sins that I struggle with. I've been very blessed, like that. Chastity is not one of the things I have to struggle with. That's
your girl.
I'm passionate about.
Freaking girls are like robots.
Girls can still struggle with it. But for me, that's not one of the ones. For me, it's the two are like sloth and gluttony are like my two that I really have to fight against. But I think it's like that advice of like, you just need to stop doing this. And then for me, one of the things is I don't have the 3 o'clock thing, but for me, it's the Angelus at noon and 6. Like I'm very rigid about getting the Angelus, like stopping whatever I'm doing at noon and 6 o'clock, like on the dot.
Like, You don't wake up at 6 a.m. for
I'm not
Margo?
exactly a morning person, so I'm not usually awake at 6 a.m. But I do noon and 6 p.m. Whatever. But I am very strict. Like right at like noon on the dot. Like I like count it down to the very second at noon and 6 p.m. Like I pray the angels, and that's a discipline for me to like remember the incarnation and to just stop what I'm doing, just have that little discipline. Be like, this is more important than whatever else I'm doing. Like, just taking like 2 minutes, 3 minutes to stop and pray the Hail Marys and think about the incarnation. Like that. Like it has to be more important. Well, we stayed on topic for the most part. Like,
no, the reason I diverted is because I'm not going much longer here, guys. I have work in the morning.
Yes, you are. We are going another 6 hours on chastity.
We did want to address chastity, and the thing is, our shows never stay on track, guys.
But I still want to do a full episode on chastity.
Phil says, "What does any of this have to do with Traditionis custodes?" I don't know.
Phil, that was a clickbait title. I'm not gonna lie.
Didn't Francis say something about pornography in that?
I still want to do a full. I want to do a whole extra episode on chastity, though. I have a lot to say.
Anthony, something wrong.
Rob, can you kick it? Can you?
Yeah, we'll let him calm down for a couple of minutes.
And can you give me controls at some point? Like, I want to be able to have controls that you have.
That's actually a lot harder to do, but we can.
Come on, that's funny.
Why are you back? What are you doing here? It's past your bedtime. Go to bed. You said I could take over the stream.
We have a very.
You promised I could take over the stream.
You can honestly, Margo, it's all you. If you want to
go
no
promises of that.
Rob,
Anthony did on Twitter. Anthony promised me.
Listen, Margo, the problem is, I'm going to be honest. Rob's really the boss around here.
I'd have to be, right? Otherwise, this wouldn't work.
It would be so chaotic if Rob wasn't Rob has total veto power over everything. I asked Rob to come on, and he goes, "Look, I'll come on, but here's the rules." And he gave me a list of rules, and he made me sign a contract. So in the end,
I was recently watching. I don't know if you guys noticed. I was recently going back through your channel, watching the old videos and watching your very first trivia shows and stuff. And like, oh my gosh, it was so funny to see. Like, you guys were like, okay, we're gonna have rules. It's gonna be like, I'm just like watching him cracking up. I'm just like, this is not on how you guys thought. You guys were like, we're gonna have 2 contestants every week. It's gonna be like Jeopardy style or something.
So
I'm just like,
listen, the other thing is how Rob and I have grown in our friendship over time too, right? So like those first few episodes, we were a little awkward together. We didn't know each other well.
And we thought it was actually going to be about trivia. It wasn't until we got to know each other. We're like, no, this is about something else.
Like the
Anthony
real
said
friendship.
He was keep score. That was the best thing ever. Like in one
we used to have Mrs. Casey keep score, and then it was like, this isn't where Rob, you're gonna keep score. You'll just help me. But the one thing that I don't know if people really pick up on is the real friendship Rob and I have developed. Like Rob and I talk to Rob more than my wife. It's like we really have, and Hope too. I like credit for volunteering. No, honestly, Hope, not just volunteering him, even what we're doing now, allowing like my wife too. I have to give her credit. She's Rob and Anthony are the off-brand Cheerios version of Marshall.
But unlike Cheerios being the off-brand, yes, we're cheaper and production value is lower, but we're never going to let you down. We'll always be there at the bottom, on the bottom shelf in the grocery store for you. Always there for you.
I'm not going to be fighting or anything. There's not going to be any big feud or anything. Like,
no, the first show Rob and I did together, like, so he came on as a guest the first time. And I just liked Rob immediately. Like, our temperaments are perfect for each other. So the second episode, we opened with a funny line. Like, we opened the second episode, and I go, okay, guys, here, look, Rob's joining the channel. We're going to be partners in this thing. We're going to do this. We make one promise. If we ever split up, we won't do it like TNT. It'll be amicable. We won't just never talk to each other again. It was a very, very, very funny joke.
It's funny because I didn't come on until I found you guys, I think, on episode 10. Because I originally saw Anthony on Twitter. I don't remember when I first saw Anthony on Twitter, but at first I did not like Anthony because I did not understand Anthony, and he was just very harsh and stuff. So I was like, I'm not going to watch this trivia show. I'm not going to watch it.
Out of here.
You either love Anthony.
It kept showing up on my Twitter feed somehow. It just kept showing up. I was like, okay, fine. I'll tune in. I'll give
Wait,
it a
you didn't
watch.
like me at first,
Not at
Margo?
first, but then I
What?
like because I understood your sense of humor. Then I was like, this guy's hilarious. He's just such a sarcasm and stuff.
I've been like a Margo fan from day one, and she didn't like me in the beginning. This
not
is
at
terrible.
first. I had to get used to you, just like with the Latin Mass. I was resistant at first, but then I grew to like it. Then I grew to like you. And
All
I was
right,
like,
I'll accept
this
that.
guy
That's
is
fair.
hilarious.
I
Actually,
take time to
Anthony,
grow up.
sing this.
Would you ever give us up? Would you
So
ever give us up?
Would you
Listen,
ever let us
very,
down?
I'm very sentimental, so like every once in a while I spill into this I love Rob thing, and everybody's like, all right, we get it, Anthony. But I do have to mention it because we have a genuine friendship. It's not like we don't just do this because we are whatever. Like honestly, we talk and we're like, we don't care if we ever make money with this, we're having fun. Like, we really do have fun doing this. We love the interaction with everybody. We do love Margo. Margo, this is your, third appearance on our channel?
I think so, because I've been on trivia twice, and this is my first time really being on to such
This is your actual first conversation where you're not playing trivia, and I think everybody loved having you on. So I see you definitely coming back on in the future.
We need to do a full episode on Chastity. I have a lot to say. I have so much to say about Chastity.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need
not
to
just about pornography or anything, but about marriage, about contraception, like everything. Like there's so much, and there's still, even though you guys did a really good show with Tim Gordon on Friday, there was still a few other things that I still wanted to hit on. Because
right off the bat, we didn't. Even with that episode with Tim, we never talked about surrogacy. There were so many things we didn't get to, but it was really because of technical issues.
There was like weird clicking noise and stuff. And I'm sorry wasn't able to be there in the live comments on Friday. I had a friend who needed me at the last minute, but I hope I made up for it by commenting on the video afterwards. But yeah, there's just so much to say. One of the biggest things, preview for one of my biggest things is that we need to rediscover friendships. Is one of the biggest things.
I think even Phil likes me now. Like, I don't know, but I think I'm growing on Phil.
I hope I won over Phil, because me and Phil kind of got into it last night on Meaning of Catholic with Angela.
Phil speaks his mind. He doesn't hold back.
I was speaking my mind in the Meaning of Catholic channel last night with Angela and Haley, because I got fired up about Latin Mass last night.
Like I tend to say, there's no liking Anthony. You either viscerally and involuntarily love Anthony, or you despise him.
I'm an acquired taste too, apparently. Margo says, you have to acquire a taste for me. I'm not exactly everybody's cup of tea at first, but stick with me. You guys have fun.
You're the hilarious New Yorker. And hey, I have something about New Yorkers, hey, you, Michael Knowles, there's something about New Yorkers.
It's not easy. Tim Flanders has had to actually apologize to some of the women in the chat for me before, and actually said, look, Anthony's from New York. He has a little brash sense of humor, but he's in good faith,
It's Italian misogyny. Don't worry. It's just an act.
Anytime I make those jokes, it's not ever, if anybody interprets that as me actually being, it's the goof is I'm being a stereotypical out of touch Italian. I'm not really that guy. Playing a character, guys.
Yes.
So, but guys, this was
I have
really
to say, before we sign off, I need to say my catchphrase, especially to Supreme Crusader, who I know is in the chat. Be Catholic.
Yes, be Catholic.
Be Catholic, SC.
As kind of a wrap up about the article and about the whole issue, what breaks it here about, he doesn't even go to the TLM, and he says the TLM has changed his life, and what he really means by that is the traditional Catholic faith has changed his life, right? Because he's been introduced to it, even though he hasn't gone to the TLM. And for a lot of us, that's what the TLM. When people say some people make an idol of the TLM, what I don't think they realize is that we see the TLM as the liturgical embodiment of the traditional Catholic faith that we've come to love, right? I went to the TLM and it caused me to learn about the faith, and that's why I love it now. Oh, Anthony can't even be serious for 5 minutes.
No, listen, the thing is, everybody's making fun of me and it's all funny stuff.
Okay, you know what? We really need to get... Okay, what would happen if Michael Knowles and Anthony were on a live stream together? Because I
don't know. I've never seen a video of them.
Listen,
Michael also loves The Godfather. He's Sicilian. He's a New Yorker. Catholic.
I would straighten that guy right out. I tell him to get that suit off. Stop pretending you're this professional guy. Be the Italian New Yorker you are. Stop it. You're not fooling anybody with that suit. That's what I would tell him.
I don't understand the whole horse head thing, because Sicilians love to eat horse. right? I mean, isn't that a good thing?
What?
Yeah, horse meat is like the second most popular meat in Sicily.
Okay.
Wait, what is this? Wait, Brick says the Orthodox real Catholicism has changed my.
No,
I'm sorry.
There's another comment from Brick that we need to see The Godfather as a trash movie.
No, Phil says if I had Michael Knowles on, I would dominate.
That would be interesting.
Chastity.
Chastity.
All right, so listen, we do have to wrap this up. This is almost 2 hours. I thought we were going to do an hour show tonight, and I get carried away.
Talk about Latin Mass. What did you expect? I said 6 hours. I said
no, listen.
6 hours.
I finally met somebody as chatty as I am in Margot, and it was really
Margot. You should have seen all the private messages where he was telling me to mute you, to kick you off. I mean, it's been going on and on all episodes.
I finally met the female version of me who just is talking. Margot, if you ever say to mute me again, you and I are one and the same. So you better understand.
My mom is from Long Island, so
your mom?
My mom's from Long Island. My dad's from New Jersey. They met at Notre Dame.
Where in Long Island?
At Wanta.
Holy cow! No way.
Is that near you?
Okay, guys, we're done. It's been a good show, but we got to go now.
Bye, guys.
Tell your mom I grew up in Levittown. It's one town over.
Okay.
All right, Rob, take us out, guys. This was really fun. Oh, tomorrow night, Meaning Catholic trivia.
Yeah, Advent now for you back on.
Advent special.
Yeah. Do we have anything else, Margot? Do you have anything else to plug for?
There's gonna be stuff coming out with Master of the Ages really soon. Just stick with us. We're gonna have a lot of big announcements for 2023 coming very soon.
And Monday on Fawaz's channel, Enoch's channel, I am so pumped about that. Being exposed to Enoch's audience.
I will be on Enoch's show on December 12th. So
get out of here.
Yes.
Oh, very cool.
I invited myself on, not on Twitter.
Enoch is the greatest guy ever.
I snuck into a Twitter thread with him, and it was just like, "Hey, when's my turn?" And he gave me December 12th. So.
And I will quickly grift my wife's little bird sculpting business on Etsy. It's Blyton's Bird on Etsy. I'll put that in the chat. So check that out if you like birds. And then also Phil says, Meaning a Catholic through Our Lady of Victory Press will be releasing Jeremiah Bannister's book Into a Million Pieces, I think. About
it's either In a Million Pieces or Into a Million Pieces.
Is Into a Million Pieces that one book that was on Oprah like 2 decades ago? I might be. Regardless.
It's something similar to that. Well, real quick, I'm too tired to do a Telegram show after this, but
yeah, my wife is already going to kill me, so no.
Yeah, we were supposed to do an hour tonight. We went to. Okay, Rob, I'm sorry I cut you off, but yeah. Oh, so Jeremiah's book coming out very soon. We're gonna have Jeremiah on. Yeah, when that comes up. So, buy Hope's birds, or you'll lose your salvation. No salvation outside of Bird Etsy.
Wait, hey, Supreme, you're a Lutheran. Is that even possible?
When's this guy converting? Come on,
be Catholic. Be Catholic.
He probably has already, and he's just
pretending.
Yeah, this is just his bit, right? Like Anthony's the biggest feminist in the world, but he's got to play the misogynist.
Yeah, it's just a joke. He's just acting.
Good night, everyone.
Terry,
she's closing the show for us.
Terry, I want your conversion story, so keep in touch with us. I want Terry on soon.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
All right, take us out, Robbie.
Good night.
Whoa, Robbie?
Robert Blyton.
Oh my goodness.
Unite the clans. Back to